Hey, I'm Chris. I live in Las Vegas and I used to be a psychonaut. Now, you might ask, what on earth is a psychonaut? A psychonaut, from what I've seen from YouTube, is the current definition of somebody who takes hallucinogenic drugs in order to experience different planes or different experiences of consciousness and maybe interact with whatever personalities or beings they meet in that other state of consciousness. Let me delve further. So, if you have ever read Aldous Huxley's book, The Doors of Perception, or maybe if you've ever listened to the music of The Doors from the 1960s and 70s, maybe if you were into the kids in the 1960s, those hippies, you might have heard of transcendental meditation and people taking hallucinogenics in order to have spiritual experiences. Now, I grew up in an environment where we were very much taught that the supernatural was real. And we were very much taught that there was an invisible world that lived outside and within the world that we live in. So this is what I was taught as a child, and this is what I believed as a young person. So the idea of taking hallucinogenic drugs to have a spiritual experience was very much primed in me as a child. So I grew up in a Judeo-Christian home, and we believed in the supernatural, stuff in the Bible. We believed in an idea of good and evil and that there's a world outside of ours. So the whole idea of experiencing a different spiritual plane isn't outside of the realm of possibility for that kind of person. So there is a disclaimer for this video. I in no way endorse people taking hallucinogenic drugs or illegal drugs. This is my own story. This is my own experience that I experienced in the 1990s. I was a child, a kid, teenager in the 1990s. The club scene, the rave scene was very big. Taking hallucinogens was very big. And I will tell you my stories of having visions and hallucinogenic experiences, starting with the first time I took hallucinogens. And basically, if a person is experiencing any sort of addiction to drugs, I suggest that they get help. I've worked in recovery, I've worked in harm reduction. If you're experiencing any sort of addiction or you feel that taking any sort of substance is taking control of your decision making, I really suggest that you find people who truly care about you and you seek out counseling and help. There are ways, there's harm reduction, there are ways to cut down usage, there's ways of changing usage, there's ways of changing your life. I have experienced addiction myself, and I've worked in counseling and in helping people get help. So I, of course, will always endorse that to anybody who is experiencing addiction. Again, I do not judge if somebody is taking hallucinogenic drugs or illegal drugs. I am not a judge. I will say as well, all of these experiences are years behind me. All of this happened 20 years ago. I no longer take hallucinogenic drugs. I'm very much California sober. I'm not going to say Nevada sober because Nevada sober can mean almost anything. But California sober is more or less universally understood that someone who drinks and is not like adverse to pot. So again, I was a teenager in the 1990s, and the first time me and a buddy took acid, keep in mind, I was a child in the 80s. I was a teenager in the 90s, and the 90s was very much about club culture, very much about rave culture, very much about renting out a warehouse and throwing a big, huge party. And I would accidentally run into those in Las Vegas. Even though I was very religious at the time, I would still run into a rave. I still had curiosities about the cool music and about dancing, about the whole scene. So, around 18 years old, something like that, between 18 to 21 years old, I was working at a Pizza Hut as a cook. And one night, because it was a late night shift, we would always go to Walmart just to mess around. and buy stuff and like, go through the clothes. I think we were buying Dickies at night because that's what you wore in the 1990s. If you grew up in the hood, you always bought Dickies from Walmart. So I think we were buying Dickies from Walmart for work. So this kid, the skater kid, comes up to us in the men's section and he offers to sell us like a sheet of acid. And we both, me and my friend at the time, I think we were 18 to 21, we both were potheads. We smoked pot. We worked at just a Pizza Hut as cooks. It was, we were cool. We loved pot. And when the dude offered us acid, we had never taken hallucinogens before. We'd always heard about them. We, of course, heard stories about what it was like to take hallucinogens. And we were like, cool. So we bought a little sheet of acid with these little Space Invader, like those figures from Space Invader were printed on all the little like tabs. So I think me and my friend took 1 or 2 tabs each. And 2 hours later, or actually 30 minutes later, we were frying balls. Now, what is it like to take hallucinogens? What is it like to take acid? Number one, a whole bunch of things are happening. Medically, it's a toxin. You're taking a toxin that's making your mind hallucinate. Your brain is generating so many different hormones and chemicals in order to make a person believe they're seeing things that they're maybe not perceiving in the everyday world. Now, what will you see when you're taking hallucinogens? You will see patterns in everyday things. You will have ideas that you don't normally have. You will get very philosophical. You will have instances of empathy for others. You will feel the same emotions of the people around you, or you think you will. Some people have had experiences of telepathy while taking hallucinogens. A funny off story, the history of the drug ecstasy, very much popular in the 1990s as well. Psychologists were prescribing ecstasy for couples therapy in the 1970s. So 2 people would go in for couples therapy having problems communicating. The psychologist would give them ecstasy and they would feel each other's emotions and communicate better. Now, you gotta love like mental health in the 1970s. I would have really loved to have been that like psychiatrist, psychologist as a patient back then. So going back to the acid, it opened up a whole new world. It opened up a whole idea of consciousness to me. It opened up idea that you can take a substance and go to a different place. Now, this is nothing new. Human beings have been taking hallucinogenic substances ever since before society as we know it. It goes back to the most ancient forms of shamanism and when human beings were nomadic tribes. Basically, nomadic wandering tribes, they always had a medicine person, a wise person, some old person who knew everything, supposedly in their world. And in their world, it was very superstitious, and they as well knew everything that they could about the physical world, about biology, about agriculture, about the movements of the sky. Now, very common like earth sciences nowadays, but back then it was high tech. So, of course, it was before technology, so of course there's a little bit of superstition in there, or a lot, and a lot of ideas of symbolism and the visions that they would have when they ingested their hallucinogens. Basically, the shamans of the ancient world, when they had a problem, they would take their hallucinogens, they would take their substances, they would go and converse with the spirit world and hopefully come back changed and with some sort of information to convey into the physical world. Now, there's a whole bunch of religions, there's a whole bunch of teachings, whether you go into Zen Buddhism or transcendental meditation, to where there are all kinds of practices in order to project out of your body, have experiences into a different world, and come back into this world with some sort of knowledge or some sort of something that has changed you, something that you can convey to the rest of the world. Now, again, I used to love the kids of the 60s when I was in the 1990s. I was a teenager. I thought the teens and the people in their 20s and the 60s were so awesome. So again, that opened up the door for me experimenting with hallucinogens. So again, the first time I did acid, I saw patterns and things. I saw waves. I saw foil-like pictures on walls. You know, if it was a black light poster, the thing was alive. If you look in your reflection, if you're on some sort of hallucinogen, especially acid, you will notice your face change. You will notice yourself age, like from young to old to old to young. You will see and feel things that you don't normally see and feel. And of course, the ancients would perceive any hallucinogens as some sort of spirit contact. I can say that I've had visions and I have seen things both on a hallucinogen and off a hallucinogen, and I will tell you one or two stories and the differences between. So, again, because I grew up in a superstitious world, a superstitious worldview, I believed whatever I was seeing in these instances were parts of the supernatural. Now, again, there's a whole bunch of ancient history and a whole bunch of different religions that also believe the same. So, again, me being some geeky guy into ancient books and history, I believed it the same. I believed that taking hallucinogens wasn't just a chemical reaction or some sort of delving into into the individual's own mind. I believed that it was going to a different place, or you were experiencing genuine supernatural activity after taking hallucinogenic substances. So, we would take mushrooms after that. We would take all kinds of tabs of acid if we could find it. There were kids up the street who were skaters and they smoked pot and they knew how to like buy acid and like, what do you call those? Droppers of acid that would have like 50 to 100 drops of like acid. We would buy like droppers of acid and we would fry out and run around the city and have little fry adventures. Now, seeing all sorts of things, thinking that they were supernatural. Now, this is how I spent my my late teens and my early 20s in the 1990s. What can I say about mushrooms? Mushrooms is very much the same. You will perceive things that you don't normally perceive. You might see things or have encounters with what you would think are spirit things, or you would think that were like dwarves or elves or smurfs or what have you. You will see life in all sorts of things that are inanimate. So you will see inanimate things come to life. You will have conversations with things that aren't there. It can happen. You can get lost in a hallucination. It can happen. And I do have to say that these, I know it's a horrible leftover notion from the 1980s and the just say no notion, but doing drugs can lead to harder drugs and they can lead to addiction. So again, another warning. So again, we were dopey kids who smoked pot and we did acid and we did mushrooms every now and then. When we were off work, we all worked some sort of fast food job or some kind of service industry job. And then when you're off work, you get fucked up. So again, I am not like telling everybody that's cool. It's just my story and my truth that I lived. So we did have hard times. At growing up, we were living in a very hard neighborhood. So a lot of people do turn to substances for some sort of escape. And because we had experimented with other drugs as well. There was a time where we had taken cocaine. There was a time that I've experienced angel dust. And I will tell you what I saw on that trip. So we were smoking angel dust or wet off of a cigarette dipped in formaldehyde. And you will experience visions. Very much what some people would say they've experienced on DMT, or some people have experienced on what's that date rape drug? GMT, anyways, GHB. Anyways, so I was smoking some wet or some angel dust with a friend, and 30 minutes into hitting the angel dust cigarette, I basically fell out of my body, or I perceived myself falling out of my body into a dark world. And in that dark world, it felt like I was in a cave. And there was no light, there was no nothing, but I could perceive or feel that I was surrounded by other people. And those other people were like silhouettes or shadow forms. And I know this sounds very odd, but it felt like I was underground and it felt like I was in a cave. And I was looking up in this place, fully surrounded 360 in this place with all these other people that had no form. And I looked up and there was like 2 stars. And I looked up at the 2 stars, and in the 2 stars, I could see out my eyeballs into the living room that I was kind of stuck in. I was basically really fucked up on angel dust in somebody's living room, making audible, inaudible noises, right? My friends told me I was doing that for 30 minutes. But in that 30 minutes, what I was experiencing was me being in this cave with all these people, talking about who they were. And it's very strange. Now, where was I? Did I go into the spirit world? Did I go into the land of the dead and talk to all the dead people? Because that's who they told me they were. Or did I experience some sort of state of consciousness to where I went into my deepest subconscious, where I could look outside of my body into those 2 stars? I could see where I was, but I couldn't reach that place. It was very strange. It was very much apart from where I am now. So, talking to those people, by the way, into that dark place, they were very sad and very lonely. And there was no life there. There was no light. There was no stimulus. It was just being there with nothing. And with each other, but with nothing and each other, which is very odd, very way to describe what they were experiencing in that dark place. And the being or the person that I was talking to in that place was telling me what it was like to be there, that it was sad and it was cold and it was lonely. And basically it wasn't like the world of life, right? So I assumed later, and especially back then, being someone who grew up in a spiritual world, believing that I had gone to the land of the dead or had gone to a place that was like it, right? Or something adjacent to the land of the dead, right? Because even the person, the being, the consciousness I was talking to in this place said that they were once a person like I was a person, right? So that was their understanding of it. Now, you can imagine coming back from that place, because 30 minutes later, snap, I'm back in that living room. I stopped making the inaudible noises, and my friends were like, oh my God, you were fucking saying inaudible noises for 30 minutes. You were like gone, right? And there are many instances where other friends of mine, we were doing angel dust and they were gone for 30 minutes, right? And came back. The hardest thing ever was coming back from that, thinking that, damn, I died and I came back to life, or I had gone to the land of the dead, at least visited, and came back, right? And then I had to ride my bike back through the ghetto to get to my own house. That was the longest bike ride ever, but that's how that night went. So, again, there are many nights where we had done hallucinogens and we had thought we had seen things or had experienced things. There are many times, I remember I was coming home from church with one of my girlfriends from youth group, and we had both bought some Black Pyramid acid. Now, again, acid, when you buy acid, it comes in little sheets, or it did back then in the 90s. It comes in little sheets and little squares, and sometimes those little squares have little pictures on them. And we bought these black sheets of acid with little pyramids on them. So basically they call those Black Pyramid acid. So we took some Black Pyramid acid like right after church, right? And because we are church kids and we were firm believers in Jesus and the Bible and all of that, we saw things that were reflective of what we were believing at the time. So you can have a good trip and you can have a bad trip when you're taking some sort of hallucinogen. And if anybody else is a psychonaut and has experienced that sort of thing, you know there are tricks to get you in and out of a bad experience. Hopefully, if you've had experience taking hallucinogens, you know what your own tricks are to go from sad to paranoid to happy again. All right, so mine's usually music, some happy cartoon, some kind of happy TV show, something trying to get your mind off of what's freaking you out to what makes you happy. That always worked for me if I was like having a bad trip. So after church, we pop acid, right? So both of us are getting high at like somebody's house after we popped acid, and we start to see things, both of us together, because believe it or not, 2 people who are taking a hallucinogen can have shared hallucinations and can see the same thing. So both of us are seeing devils and demons like around all of us, like hanging out, like gargoyle, leathery winged, like invisible, like creatures influencing everybody in the fucking house, right? And we're just getting stoned. It's not like we're smoking crack in this house, dude. We're just smoking pot. Somebody's playing video games. Somebody's like talking about some bullshit. Somebody's watching TV. That's what's going on in this apartment, right? But me and my girlfriend from church see demons like orchestrating every little fucking thing, right? And they're invisible. And we both look at each other and we both knew we were seeing the same fucking thing, right? So we're both having a bad trip. We're having it at the same fucking time. So we leave my house. We leave that place and we go to my house to watch some happy movie. And of course, we zapped ourselves out of feeling bad. But again, you could have a shared hallucination with the same person. You could feel the same things. You could think the same things. You could see the same things. It's proven scientifically that it happens as well. People who have had religious experiences in large crowds, they can all see the same thing and have the same hallucination and believe that they've all seen the same thing. Now, again, what is the point of that? Why do human beings do that? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's some kind of groupthink. I'm not sure if it's some kind of collective unconscious, if all human beings, like Carl Jung, like we believe that all human beings are connected in some subconscious way, in some collective unconscious way. I have no clue. But I believed all of that at the time. At the time, I believed that we're all spiritual creatures. We're all connected in some spiritual, psychic way. Again, that is the way I was brought up. Okay, so I believed in all of those things. I am currently I'm currently an agnostic skeptic. So I question everything, and I work in healthcare, so everything is more or less science and experimentation and documentation in my world. And I want to keep it that way because it's a little bit more understandable than filling in the blanks with the supernatural. A little bit personal there, a little bit more personal. But there are plenty of times where I've had psychic visions, or what I perceived as psychic visions, where I was on a non-hallucinogenic drug, or just being in a place. Now, I was smoking pot once with some people in my 20s, and we were talking about stories and our interests, and I had touched a person, and I was immediately pulled out of my body, or what you would think is our consciousness, the world that we are all experiencing in this 360 world, and I found myself in another place to where I saw this person. It was the same guy, but the place was some horrible, war-torn, like, battlefield. And he was wielding a sword, fighting another person to the death, right? And I can't tell you how real that place was, or that experience was. It was very much, it felt as real as being in that dark, cold, scary land of the dead place. So, it was all red. It was a war-torn battlefield. And I could taste the blood. I could feel the heat in the sun. I could feel the anger and the men and the fight and the battle. And I could feel and see and experience this person sword fighting this person to the death. And then suddenly I'm ripped out of that place, back into my own body, smoking weed in a circle of people. And then I immediately start crying like a fucking baby, and like lost and hysterical and a hallucination. And I think they thought that I lost my fucking mind. And I tried to explain to him that I saw a vision of him killing somebody on some battlefield. And me being some psychic weirdo at the time thought that I saw the future. But it very well could be that I listened to this dude's story and had some odd hallucination, because this dude happened to be a swordsman, and he happened to be very trained in like katana blades and fighting as a swordsman. And I think he believed in a past life that he was a swordsman, like one of those things, right? I could have very well had some weird hallucination, some acid flashback, right? But that's another time I was taking a non-hallucinogenic drug. We were actually just smoking pot. Some have experienced hallucinations by smoking pot. I don't know if it was really incredible pot that was laced, but again, pulled out of my body having a hallucination. There are plenty of times where I have experienced psychic experiences where I've left my body and seen things. Now, again, I grew up in a world that was very superstitious. I grew up in a family that believed in psychic phenomenon. And it was very much encouraged when we were children that if you feel that you've had a psychic experience, more than likely it was true. So as a teenager and as an elementary kid, honestly, I would read a lot about the supernatural, and I would read about people and scientific studies and the idea of researching the paranormal and the idea that people have had psychic experiences documented in history for thousands of years, right? All of human history, people have felt they've had psychical experiences, whether it be communication with the spirit world or having the idea of experiencing synchronicity. I'm one of those geeky people. I experience synchronicity all the time, even though I'm an agnostic skeptic. I know who's calling on the phone all the time. I know who's around the corner, like most of the time. Like, it's just one of those funny things. I accept it as being very real phenomenon, even though I have no idea what it is. I don't pretend to know the answers of life and death and consciousness. Actually, that's the whole idea of being agnostic. It's the idea of not knowing. But the whole idea of what I've experienced as being a psychonaut is that you can take hallucinogenic drugs. You can experience different planes of consciousness. You can meet other people in other places. There are many times I've experimented with astral projection. I used to do it very well, and lucid dreaming as a child. Now, you can argue, as a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists would say, it's just lucid dreaming. Human beings are just lucid dreaming, experiencing visions in their mind, thinking that they are projecting out of their body. Totally understandable. I'm totally in on that too. I'm cool if that's the truth. Again, that would just be some sort of psychic journey. If somebody comes back from such an experience feeling like they've learned something about themselves or the world, then it can be beneficial. But in the new age world, the whole idea of projecting yourself out of your body and going to see things, they believe that more or less you are going to real places. You are going to real dimensions. You were seeing real people, places, things, whether it be in our world or in some odd supernatural world, right? That can open the box into all sorts of superstitious practices and company. I have experienced cults in Las Vegas. I've been a member of several cults. I never really went all in, but at the same time as I was a member, I hung out. I've done culty practices with wonderful people who are intelligent, but at the same time as they believe in the supernatural. And the most intelligent people can do very strange things or have very strange experiences because of their belief system. Organized religion, because of a belief system, very strange things, very powerful things. So what I've taken back from doing all of these hallucinogens, and keep in mind, I haven't done anything like that in years, like maybe a decade, right? They can be beneficial. There are scientific studies that taking mushrooms helps people out of addiction. I can say that there was a time where I was leaning on drinking, and there was a time in my life where I drank a lot and I leaned on top of that. And the funny thing is, I took mushrooms and I had a wonderful mushroom trip. It was wonderful, it was beautiful, it was scary. And at the end of that, I stopped drinking to excess. Again, I do not prescribe anybody any sort of hallucinogen. I don't even practice any of that currently, but I have experienced that, and I have experienced the benefits of such a thing. What can I say about coming back from such places? I've never done DMT. I've never done ayahuasca. I've never done anything like that. Now that I feel I'm a little older, I'm very apprehensive because I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of tragedy. I've had a lot of trauma. Being a middle-aged person, I feel that my psyche might not be able to handle what visions I may be able to manifest if I took such substances now. Plus, you can't control where you go. When it comes to some hallucinogens like DMT and ayahuasca and GHB, you can't control what you're gonna see. With acid, with other things I've done, you can control it. With the angel dust, yeah, I absolutely could not control what that was. With the touching this person and having a psychic vision and seeing them on some battlefield and coming back hysterical, sure as hell couldn't control that. It was just like being Phoebe on fucking Charmed. Don't recommend getting into the supernatural if you're already into the supernatural. Watch your back. Weird shit can happen. But more than anything, I just wanted to share my experience to let you know that this stuff can happen and that, I don't know, phenomenon is real. What the phenomenon is, still not really scientifically like nailed down. So, hugs, health, happiness from Las Vegas.